Okay, so now we're gonna look at the alanine cycle. So the alanine cycle is another type of cycle where we see a recycling of these different molecules, specifically alanine, right? So alanine is amino acid that gets recycled back into the liver and re-enters the muscular system and everything like that. So it's a very, very beautiful way how the bodies find a way to cope with this mechanism. So if we were to draw the two tissues involved, so let's draw the liver, right? And then here, let's draw, for example, the muscle involved, right? So you have the two structures that are involved here. And so alanine cycle involves amino acid alanine, right? And so during instances of very low blood sugar, this cycle becomes very high active because during instances of gluconeogenesis becomes active, and gluconeogenesis wants to increase your blood sugar levels, right? And so the sugar originally here that starts in the muscle, glucose, right, gets broken down through the process of glycolysis into pyruvate. So pyruvate. And so that process, sugar breakdown. Pyruvate now, rather than entering the Krebs cycle, right? So Krebs cycle in order to become energy, it goes through a different pathway where it gets converted to alanine. It's a deamination process where you have these alpha amino acids come in, these alpha amino acids that get converted into alpha ketones, right? So they donate that amine group to this pyruvate in order to get alanine, all right? So now alanine leaves the muscles, right? So here we'll just label this muscle so we know where we're looking at. So leaves the muscle and enters the liver now, right? So now you want to convert this alanine back into sugar, right, in order to be recycled back in, right? So it's a completely circular process, keeps going and going and going until your body dies, right? So now, if I were here, now you have the alanine being introduced into the liver, right? And so it needs to be converted back into pyruvate, right? So pyruvate, the mechanism from acetyl-CoA to pyruvate does not exist. There is no actual mechanism where so pyruvate to acetyl-CoA is a rate limiting step, and there is no mechanism that you show this reversibility, right? So this, I'll write it in red. No, this cannot ever happen, right? This process going from acetyl-CoA to pyruvate never happens, right? So there's other mechanisms that you need to generate pyruvate from in order for the process of gluconeogenesis to take place, right? And so alanine here comes in and gets converted into pyruvate. But during this process, what gets released is an amine group. So this amine group eventually goes through another process and it becomes urea, and it gets excreted out the urinary system or the renal system, right? And now pyruvate being converted back to glucose is a reversible process, right? So it goes through the process of gluconeogenesis here to give you glucose. So now glucose, right, from the final rate step where the glucose 6-phosphate gets converted to glucose, right? So the glucose 6-phosphate phosphatates, G6P phosphatase, takes off that final phosphate group of the glucose, and now you have this static glucose, and now this re-enters the muscle for glycolysis, or again, depending on what the situation is, right? So this process of alanine increasing glucose levels in pink, right? This is usually generated by the hormone secreted from the alpha cells in your pancreas called glucagon. So glucagon, if you remember, from your pancreas is the endocrine region. So glucagon leads to the increase in glucose levels, blood levels. Vice versa, the insulin leads to the decrease in glucose levels, so the actual breakdown of glucose and storage. And so this is the basic pathway for the alanine cycle.